back to Ronda.
Yes,
Your thoughts
yes.
on this? So this is just incredible to me because as I was saying, at the end of the fight, she's standing in the middle of that octagon, and like I've never seen an athlete look so lost and so defeated in my life. It was sad.
Yeah, I was actually going to say it was a little sad to see just because of what she represents in MMA and, how big of a star she was and how dominant she was. To me, the main question going into this fight, and it was a question that was truly left unanswered going into the fight because she wouldn't talk to any of us. That question was, are you over the Holly Holm fight? That was really the top question on my mind. Have you gotten over it? Because as you guys know in sports, you suffer a crushing defeat. We want to see how this person rebounds. We see it in every sport, whether it's team sports, individual sports. How do they rebound? Especially a champion who loses their title, who's undefeated. There's so much that has changed now in your life. Your identity has changed. So how are you going to rebound? What's going on in your mind? Are those wounds still fresh? We never got to ask her that question. And, 48 seconds later, I got the answer to my question. She's not over the loss, clearly. And to be honest, the fact that she wouldn't talk to us, the fact that she wouldn't address it in any interview that wasn't kind of pre-produced, if you know what I'm saying, it told me all I needed to know. But really, there was still that, okay, maybe she's just kind of fooling us. Maybe she's going to look better than ever. Maybe she's going to, reinvent herself. Maybe something has changed. Well, very quickly we realized that, she's not over it. She's taken better shots than that. She's been rocked before, and she's come back, and she's won those fights. The first punch that was thrown landed, and that was the beginning of the end. And yeah, it's this game is a tough one. There's a big mental hurdle that athletes need to get over, especially when you're locked in a cage, coming off your first loss and with such a fall from grace. And unfortunately for Ronda, she still is not over that loss to Holly Holm.
She's done, right?
Who am I to say that she's done? Clearly, she has to change a few things if she wants to get back in there. She has her mom who's saying that she wants her to be done. I spoke to her longtime nutritionist, Mike Dolce, who's a former fighter, who said it's pretty much 50-50 at this point by his estimation. I don't think she's going to come back for quite some time. I think that's probably best for her, and she probably needs to change a few things in training. Usually when I don't like when a fighter loses for the first time and then just completely radically changes the whole team. I don't think that's fair to the coaches. But, we've seen enough now in 2 straight fights, and things have been brewing for quite some time to where I think, probably a change of scenery would behoove her. She's got a career outside of fighting, and she's done, a lot of good things, and she's made a lot of money, so she doesn't necessarily need this. But who knows what happens in a year or two if she gets that itch.
Conor McGregor, he must watch this and say, okay, she does no media. She makes $3 million off of this. You guys can go f*** yourselves unless you give me $20 million and I don't have to do any media. He must be just licking his chops at this right now.
Oh, man. A lot of people were saying, like, let's cut, if you were doing the UFC broadcast on Friday, could we cut to a live shot of Dublin and just see the big smile on Conor's face? And by the way, they say that Ronda made $3 million. She made way more than that because that doesn't account the pay-per-view buys and her cut of pay-per-view. And more often than not, those numbers are kind of smoke and mirrors. So trust me on this. She made well more than
wow.
$3 million. Conor. He now holds all the chips. 2016 was the year of Conor McGregor. You can make a case that despite losing to Nate Diaz in March, that he was the fighter of the year. Certainly had the greatest impact in 2016 on the sport. You can make a case that he's had the greatest impact on the sport in the history of the sport. You can make a case, and I know for a fact that he's the highest paid fighter in the sport. You can also make the case that he's the most underpaid fighter in the sport just because of how much he draws and how important he is for the UFC. And now there's no secret that, they're kind of at odds. He's saying, I want a meeting with Ari Emanuel and Patrick Whitesell of WME. I want to talk to these guys. I want my fair share. Dana White's saying he knows where to find me. Tell him to call me if he wants to talk. Clearly they're not on the same page right now. Dana's saying he's out for 10 months. He's saying, where did this 10 months come from? I never said that. But here's the truth of the matter. They need him. They need him now more than ever. With all due respect, look at the first couple months of the UFC schedule. Where are the draws?
Yeah.
Where are the big names? Where are the guys who are going to sell pay-per-views? Where are the guys? And who might be sitting back and smiling? Our good pal from Montreal, George St. Pierre, because they need him now more than ever. They need these names. And Ronda losing kind of gave them a little more leverage.
So, speaking of our good friend George St. Pierre, where are we with that? What is your inside knowledge on that situation? Because just briefly, to recap for people who don't know, the gap seemed to be that GSP's an Under Armour guy. Now the UFC's all Reebok, and obviously they needed to make up that money somehow. Are they going to be able to do that?
From what I was told, Jay, I was told that they got over that hurdle. The real issue was just, what cut of the pay-per-view and what his purse would be. And, this was GSP's take. When I signed this deal that you guys are holding me to back in 2011, the landscape was completely different. And yes, one of those issues was the fact that, now I can't wear my sponsors. I can't make that extra money. But the other issue was, in 2011, he was the champion and he got, a large chunk of the pay-per-view, and he leaves as champion in 2013. He's not returning, obviously, as champion, but he wants to try to make up some of that money because, when you're champion, when you get a cut of the pay-per-view, you end up making a lot of money, and they don't give pay-per-view points to guys who aren't champions. So this was a back and forth that was, going on for a couple of months, and it's unfortunate because he was ready and willing. Here you have arguably the greatest of all time saying, tap me in. I want to come in. I'm ready. My 3 years, it's done.
He was ready at 206, right, Ariel?
Yes. Yeah, and they kind of, they gave him the stiff arm. And I know it's business, and both sides have to come to an agreement, but so unfortunate. I can't recall in the history of sports, one of the greatest athletes saying, I want to come back, and then not being able to come to terms to come back. Could you imagine if Jordan said he wanted to come back, that year after the baseball, and the Bulls were like, yeah, we don't really want to pay you.
Right.
You got to figure it out. It's a legend. It's a pioneer. It's one of the greatest ever. So I do think Ronda losing gives him a little more leverage. I do think that they will revisit it. How much longer does he want to wait around for? That's the $1 million question. But I wouldn't slam the door shut just yet on GSP ever fighting again because he is very willing to fight again. It just has to make financial sense for him.
Ariel, can they make Cody Garbrandt a star after he beat Dominic Cruz?
Yes. This guy has it. We talk in the fight game about it. We talk in sports about the it factor. This guy has it. I don't know if have you guys talked to him?
Yeah,
he was on
twice.
The show 2 weeks ago, right before the fight with Dom.
Yeah, and apologies for missing that one. Sometimes, I have a newborn, so I can't stay up so late these days.
Hey, congratulations on the newborn.
Yeah.
That's exciting.
Thank you.
Great.
You named him Dan.
Yes. I named him Day. For Dan and Jay.
Yes,
that's very sweet. That's very. No, you know what, Ariel? I'm glad you brought that up because Cody, we knew who he was before the first interview, but he absolutely blew us away with his charisma and his comfort level and just overall, it's like you said, he was like, wow, this guy's a star. Like, this guy is genuinely a star. All he needs is to win the title. Well, he accomplished that.
He told an 8-minute story about a fight he got in with his brother, Zach, over a Subway sandwich that ended up down by the river.
This guy's got he's got a lot of stories. Truly, it's one of the greatest success stories that I've ever seen. He's been to jail. He's got a book in him. There's no doubt about that. And he's got the look, as you know, and he dresses well. He's a good-looking guy. And, it's a different kind of it factor. It's a different kind of charisma. Not everyone's Conor. Not everyone should be Conor. He has sort of like this serial killer-like approach to his interviews. His delivery is very no-nonsense. It's very straightforward. And, he's not the most verbose guy, and he's not, he doesn't have like the most eloquent vocabulary, but it's just the way he delivers his words and the conviction and the confidence in which he speaks, to me, is captivating. I actually had him on my show yesterday, and you could tell already that he was a different guy since winning the belt. His confidence has grown tremendously. I don't recall a title challenger impressing me this much in a title fight in recent memory. For him to go out and do that to Dominic Cruz, what he did, and in the middle of the fight, he's doing the robot and he's doing push-ups while schooling, the greatest bantamweight of all time, a guy who had not lost in almost 10 years. March of 2007 was his last loss, and he did that to Dominic Cruz. To me, nothing short of amazing. So yeah, they've got something with him, and you could tell they had been grooming him for quite some time, helping him out with his suits and things like that, taking him to the Lorenzo Fertitas, personal tailor, David August. So yeah, they saw something in him, and I expect them to push him very well.
Is there an MMA school they bring? You mentioned they bring them the tailors and stuff, but do they have a media training session for these guys?
They have this sort of fighter summit that they do once or twice a year. They break it up. Between veterans and up-and-comers and things like that. And so they've been doing this for the last couple of years. And I don't know how much it helps. It's not just about media. It's about taxes. It's about, handling your money. It's about, USADA, drug testing. It's about, fighting in the big leagues. I mean, there's a lot. And I do know that one of the lessons over this 3-day stretch is about media training. But most of the guys who, have it long before they get to the UFC. And it's just, sometimes the UFC will pinpoint a certain guy and they'll push him, like a Ronda, who they did a great job of pushing. But again, make no mistake about it. I mean, Ronda earned everything that she got, and she took the UFC to different heights. She opened doors for the UFC that, they could have never dreamed of opening, being on the Ellen Show, Today Show, things like that. But I will say it is disappointing to see how she's sort of reacted to, stumbling. And I told this actually to her agent, you're not defined by your losses. You're not defined by the actual, competition. You're defined by, how you handle the losses. You're defined by what you say afterwards, how you dust yourself off, how you come back. That's a true role model to me. It's not about knocking people out or submitting them or even, anything you do in the cage. It's what you do and how you handle yourself in the dark moments. And I will say that it's disappointing to see the way she's handled it over the last 13 months.
Before we let you go, Ariel, I want to put you on the spot. If you could put together a UFC pay-per-view yourself, you and Dana, men fences, your buddies again, he says, Ariel, you put this together. You put this. If you could put together a main and co-main, and I mean anybody, including GSP, anyone on the planet, who would you have as your main and co-main for a pay-per-view right now?
Wow, that is a tremendous question. Wow. Well, it would have to be, Conor at the top. So it would have to be. Can I just ask one follow-up question? Is it what tickles my fancy as an Uber fan, or what's going to make the most amount of money?
What's going to make the most amount of money?
Yeah, I would say, what's going to be best for the UFC?
Oh my. And again,
and it can't be Floyd Mayweather.
Oh God! Excuse me while I go throw up in the corner.
Oh, wow. Yeah, right.
By the way, can FS1 talk more about that fight, or I feel like it doesn't get enough coverage? I'm just kidding.
And it's our fault. We brought it up with Dana once, and I think you opened
the wound.
Yeah.
Okay, so off the top of my head, this is what I'll go with. I'll go with Conor McGregor versus Khabib Nurmagomedov for the lightweight title.
Everyone's excited about that matchup.
Yes, because the trash talking is just phenomenal. In fact, yesterday I mentioned to Khabib about it, trash talking. I commended him, and he got very upset. He said it was not trash talk; it was truth talk. So he says there's no trash when it comes to his talking. And you know what? I'll go co-main. I'll go. God, you're really putting me on the spot here.
It's tough.
Cyborg just went out. I'll go. I'll give a nod to my hometown. I'll go GSP, George St. Pierre, and let's get him back into the welterweight title picture. I'll go GSP versus Tyron Woodley. He is the one.
That would be awesome.
As a comment.
That would be massive.
That would be unbelievable. Ty Woodley. Is Ty Woodley going to fight Bisping? Ariel, what the hell's going on there?
I think those two like to. And by the way, I'm very impressed with the knowledge. I feel like you guys have really come a long way, and I've seen the interviews. But even to throw out something as obscure as that one, you know what? 5 years ago, when you guys were doing TSN Sports Desk, we weren't talking about Tyron Woodley and Michael Bisping. So kudos to you.
It's all you. It's following you. It's listening to you.
And we have Bisping on all the time, and he's such a nice guy.
He's so funny.
He's the best.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, so charismatic. I think that they are. If I may, I don't want to, rain on their parade, but I do feel as though they're kind of messing with who will likely be their opponent.
Right.
Yoel Romero for Bisping, Wonderboy Thompson for Woodley. I feel like they're trying to just rile them up and get them hot under the collar.
I think that's very accurate.
Ariel, after, you mentioned how we used to be with UFC. I now picture us like who punchy, kicky hardest?
How can we forget the first night after Chael Sonnen submitted Mauricio Shogun Rua? There you were, talking.
And he
August
sold it.
17, 2013. Yeah, remember
he sold it.
The one.
And now he's on the Celebrity Apprentice.
Unbelievable. Fighting for Viacom.
That's right. Exactly. God, that's crazy. Ariel, man, we love having you on the show. You got to check out Ariel's podcast and everything he does. It's so great. And listen, we got to get you back. We got to get you back in studio here sometime whenever you're back in LA.
Am I allowed?
Yeah.
Am I allowed?
Yeah. We'll sneak you in here.
Yeah.
I'll pick you up at your hotel, and then I'll drive you in here. You'll just have to lie down in the back seat.
Put a blanket over you, and then we'll get you.
Well, that warms my heart because there's no hard feelings on this end. I love so many of the people over there who still work there, including my man Zeus. Shout out to Zeus.
Zeus.
You know Zeus, the man.
That guy just always walking around smiling. There's something creepy
He's
about
just the
that.
happiest
There's
guy in the
something
world.
creepy about that.
Hey, can I ask you guys one question?
Yeah.
One quick question while I have the time?
Yeah.
What's going on with the Jays? Are we worried here, or is it a work in progress? It's brutal. Okay, I just wanted to make sure I was on the same page.
Yeah, it's just disappointing, I think. Like
Who offers that money and says, okay, you got to take it now? You don't? Okay.
Yeah. And
It's
who
just like a
offers
baby.
who offers Edwin that money and then says, "Oh, you don't want that? Well, we'll go sign Kendrys Morales. What do you think of that?"
Hey, you like Steve Pierce? We got him too. Oh, God.
No, I'm sure those guys are good guys, but of all the, I know I speak for Dan on this because Dan talks about this a lot. Like, love everything Jose Bautista has done, but I didn't really want him back, to be perfectly honest. I thought that would but I really wanted Edwin back. I really wanted Edwin back.
Batista never plays 100 games in a season again for the rest of his career.
Yeah, so
No. I mean, you could tell last year he was getting injured, weird injuries. I mean, Edwin still had a phenomenal year. He gave us that amazing moment. I was just disappointed, to be honest, from like a media perspective. And I know it's kind of weird up there with like, the Sportsnet guys and everything, Rogers, but they kept pushing this narrative that like, look, they gave him a great deal and Edwin turned it down. You can't offer the guy on the first day of free agency when he clearly told you that he wanted to play the field and then rescinded. To me, that's a token offer. It was never really something. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. You're 100% correct. And that's what's frustrating about the media in Canada. And again, we have lots of friends at Rogers. We just had Nick Kiprios on this podcast. We love those guys. But I was also disappointed. Listen, but you also understand why it is that way, right? You can't criticize a team that's owned by the company you're working for, really. So you have to find some narrative that works out. But I guess I kind of hope, and I think people who didn't work for Rogers were criticizing the deal, but you're right. Most of the people covering the team seem to work for the team or work for the company that owns the team now, so it is a problem. But, yeah, it's just disappointing because they've been on this great run and there's so much excitement about the team, and it seems like Rogers has just sucked that excitement right out of the whole thing.
No fun police, just like the 50-50s in Ontario.
Yeah.
We were talking about that earlier.
But let's circle January 20th on our calendar. That's when Vladimir Guerrero and Ken Reigns will get inducted into the Hall of Fame, and I hope to see you guys there at Cooperstown in July because I will be making the pilgrimage for the first time. If both those guys come in, I will say it on this podcast. Breaking news. I'm taking the family to Cooperstown. Reigns and Vladdy together? Are you kidding me? The stars aligning. This is going to ignite the return of the Expos. I feel it. It's all coming together, guys.
Absolutely. Let's talk to Bell. Let's get them to get off their wallets.
Yes.
Let's buy the Tampa Bay Rays. Let's move them up there.
Yes.
I got sucked into a Vladdy Guerrero YouTube wormhole and just watching him hit balls that bounced before the plate and everything the other night. It was great.
Ariel, best to you and your family in the new year, and congratulations again on the new baby and everything. And like we said, we're going to sneak you onto the slot before we get kicked out.
And Ariel, tell everyone where they can find everything that you put up.
Yeah. So I work for MMAfighting.com. My show's the MMA Hour and also the MMA Beat on Thursdays. And I'm a huge fan, as you know, of you guys. And don't think, I'll keep it as PC as possible. I see what's going on over there, and you have a big fan over here.